Mm-hmm. Yep.
No. Oh no.
There you go. Uh-huh. Woo! Woo!
Whew. Yes. Okay. Good morning. Good morning, Timothy, once again, and good morning to everybody who is watching the 177th episode of Japanese Politics One-on-One with Timothy Langley, CEO of Langley Esquire, and me, Maya Matsuoka, as a host. It's a pleasure to have you with us again. Timothy is still on board, which is wonderful, and he will be reporting from above the water today, hopefully, until the end of this briefing. And I want to say thank you very much again for being here this morning, because this is the place where you can really receive reliable and consistent information about Japanese politics. We have to thank Timothy Langley for this, who has been working in this field for about 40 years now, and he has been doing this for a living for a while. Not just politics, actually. He works in public policy and public relations. So, Timothy, thank you very much for sharing your insights with us every morning. I'm not every morning; it's every Sunday morning, actually.
It feels like every morning.
It feels like every morning. Yes, I know. So thanks for being here. I'm going to give you the mic so that you can brief us about the topics we're going to talk about today. And after that, I would like to have maybe 30 seconds or so just to thank our sponsors. Over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Maya. Today is the last day of June, June 30th, 2024. We are 1 week away from the election of the governor of Tokyo. That is in the news. That's going on right now. Let me see. We've got 9 other seats in the lower house that are also coming up for election on the same day. So there's excitement going on there. Taro Kono softly announced his intention to run for prime minister this week. It's been a busy week. Let me see. The Olympics, the Paris Olympics, start in less than 1 month, probably about 3 weeks. We've got that going, and the yen plummets to $161 to the yen. A lot is going on there economically and also inflation-wise with the prices here in Tokyo. But there's a lot going on. I've got about 30 things I want to talk about in very rapid order. But let me turn it over to you, Maya. Those are the top headline. There's a lot more going on, but I don't want to take up too much before I get into my briefing.
Okay, thank you very much for this. And this is a big thank you to our sponsor, Kanchu.com, that offers bilingual services to individuals and companies as well who want to buy and sell homes and property in Yokohama and the Kanto area as well. So thank you very much to them. And if you are willing to enjoy their bilingual services and customized response to your needs, you need to contact James Howell at james at kanachu.com. So the description is in the video of YouTube, and also you can contact James on LinkedIn. Timothy, once again, back to you.
Thank you very much, Maya. I am reporting today on the deck of the good ship Santana. I am here in a lagoon outside of, where are we? Near Hota. And so there's quite a bit of wind, not too many waves coming, so there might be a little bit of rocking. I hope you don't get seasick as I go through this. There's a lot going on in Japanese politics, and it's not just Japanese politics. I mean, the prospect of Donald Trump becoming president as a consequence of the debate results this last week. I know that's a big item for people. People in Japan are also very concerned about that. They wonder what a Trump presidency might look like. But I think, things are very volatile right now, and it also impacts what's going on in Japan. There's a lot going on militarily here that implies the United States being involved in that. And there is a bit of tension between the Biden administration and the Trump administration with regard to their policies regarding how to deal with China and North Korea. The other kind of big news, and we can push that off into the Q&A because I know there are a lot of people in the audience that are deeply involved in what's going on in American politics. My forte is not American politics, it's Japanese politics, as you know, if you've been tuning in. So I only have a little bit to say on that, but I know it has a huge impact. The other thing that has an impact here is Mr. Kishida standing as prime minister. So the Diet closed down, 10 days ago, and immediately Mr. Suga implied to the prime minister that he should step down. You know how Japanese language is, and how people speak here. It's not really, you're doing a terrible job, so I wish you would step down and make way for somebody else. But the implication in coming as it did from Mr. Suga was very powerful. 2 days later, Mr. Taro Kono, who is a member of the Aso faction, had dinner with him, a lengthy dinner, maybe 2 hours, 2.5 hours, where it was just Mr. Aso and Kono Taro speaking with each other. There might have been other people there, but the important thing is that they were talking about the potential for Kono running for prime minister and receiving potentially Mr. Aso's endorsement. This is the third time for Kono Taro to attempt to become prime minister. The first time was in 2019 when no, it wasn't 2019, it was 2009. When the LDP fell out of power, he attempted to run for prime minister as the party out of power. That didn't succeed. The last time he ran was against Mr. Kishida. He did fairly well, but lost in the final round. And this will be his third try. Mr. Shigeru Ichiba is also considering throwing his hat in. He's basically said he's going to run. I think all analysts believe he will run. He should run. He's a top contender, probably ranking higher than even Kono Taro. But we expect other contenders to come into that race as well. Certainly Mr. Motegi will throw his hat in, but it's a little bit early. It's 3 months away. And so it's a little bit unpolitic for somebody like Kono Taro to actually slam down the hammer, because he's still a minister of the administration. And if he's a little bit more boisterous about it, there's a potential that the prime minister could shuffle the cabinet. And of course, Mr. Kono Taro would be invited not to be in the cabinet because he's just not a team player. But I think either way it goes, he's going to throw his hat into the ring. We don't know if his appeal to his boss, Mr. Taro Aso, was successful, that Taro Aso is going to endorse him. Once again, that's a little bit early, but clearly he did state his intention to the faction boss. And by the way, the factions have diminished one more. The Nikkei faction also closed its offices this week. There's really only one faction that's still left standing. That's the Taro Aso faction with 55 members. Let's see what else we've got going on with that. I think that's it for Kono Taro. And you know, all of these things that we talk about, happens in the span of 1 week. So there's a lot going on. The Tokyo governor's race we talked about. Koike is the current governor. She is pulling ahead. She is already the favorite. She's running against Renho, is the candidate from the Constitutional Democratic Party. There is a race going on within the Tokyo metropolitan government. There's 127 seats there. The LDP holds the largest number, but it's not a large number. Out of 127 seats, the LDP holds, I think, 27. And Tomin First, which is the party that was started by Governor Koike, holds 25 seats. Komeito holds 23 seats. So within that realm, Komeito, LDP, and Tomin First, they basically dominate Tokyo metropolitan politics, and they would like to keep it that way. At least the LDP would. But it's a tight race for the LDP. The LDP has not done well in the last 6 elections. It has lost mostly to the Constitutional Democratic Party. And within Tokyo politics, the Constitutional Democratic Party does not hold a majority. It's not even close to a majority, but it's trying to right that by running candidates in a large number of these election seats. So there are, let me see, there's There's 9 seats, I'm sorry, in the House of Representatives race, which coincides. The governor's race started earlier because the candidacy for governor starts a little bit long. It is a little bit longer than the House of Representatives started less than 2 weeks ago. And there are 9 seats that are available there. The LDP currently holds 5 of those. Tomin First holds 2 of them. And this is, it's a bigger deal than actually, well, to me, it's a bigger deal than even Tokyo 15, which was a race that was lost by or won by the Constitutional Democratic Party in the by-elections. There was a lot of fanfare made of that election, but now we've got 9 seats that are open. You're not hearing a whole lot about it, and I think it could sway a lot of voters. If the LDP doesn't do well, it's got 5 seats now. If it ends up with 3 seats, for example, or less, that would be I think evaluated as a huge disaster, and anything can happen with the LDP these days in light of the kickback scandal and the fact that when the diet ended, it didn't really leave a satisfying taste in people's mouths, and it's the reason why Mr. Suga and Mr. Ishiba are so critical of the current prime minister. Kato Tono is less critical, but he has to mince his words. But they're saying that the prime minister should have taken responsibility for this kickback scandal debacle, and the law that was passed. It was unsatisfying, and it created a lot of tensions. It created a lot of tensions between the LDP and Ishin, which really is having lots of repercussions there. But I want to get into that a little bit later. Let me see, the LDP. Tomin First. Yes, I think I've covered that for you there. The Emperor Naruhito and the Empress were in England for 7 days, a long trip for a state visit. They just returned yesterday in time to catch this show, I think. And they had you couldn't have missed it on TV. A lot of fanfare, a lot of gold and glittery, and the horses and the parade and the tremendous state dinner. They were there meeting with other people who have decided to make England their lives, their livelihood. Japanese citizens there. They met with them, and they visited the botanical gardens. And I think the fact that it was a state visit for that length of time to mend the ties. I don't know if mend the ties is really the right word, but the relationship has been fraught for many years. The previous emperor had visited, and the current emperor's grandfather had visited before. But this state visit seemed to be full of warmth and intention to really develop this relationship between the two countries. It has been a little bit strained in the past, and I think that there's a tremendous effort being devoted diplomatically on developing a better relationship with England. As you know, Japan has established trilateral relationships on military funding with England and Italy for the next generation fighter. So there's a lot of interoperability and exchange going on there. And it's expected to get even greater. And we talk about it all the time, but the cooperation between like-minded countries that are concerned that China might move aggressively on Taiwan, and their interaction with Japanese forces and Japanese ground forces and the military here is just going at a breakneck speed. You probably have missed it, but I'm watching it closely because it's of keen interest to me, that there are a couple of military exercises going on. There's one called the Resolute Dragon 24, which starts this month on July 28th. It's the Ospreys doing exercises with the ground self-defense forces. So the Ospreys are these rotating rotary aircraft. They're not helicopters, and they're not quite airplanes. They're a mix of two. They were grounded until March, you might remember, because of the crash near, where was the crash? It was in Kyushu. where all 8 of the individuals inside the Osprey were killed. They were U.S. forces, but it caused a big deal, and it grounded the Ospreys for several months. They just came back online in March, and now there's a joint exercise with 10 of them going on in Kumamoto and in Okinawa. It's a kind of a come out of the closet, let's get this thing back on track. 2 of these Ospreys will be manned by the ground self-defense forces and 8 by the United States Marines. Let me see, there's also in this month, actually a little bit sooner, on July 19th, Japan hosts 4 nations fighter jet exercises, including 30 aircraft from Germany, France, Spain, and Japan. And they will be doing exercises in Hokkaido and Kumamoto and Okinawa. This is a pretty big deal. I mean, these advanced fighter jets coming to Japan and doing these exercises, it shows a resolution to combine these forces and have a unified, practiced, well organized force in the event that China moves. And I think this is just part of the theme of telling or telegraphing to China that any move on Taiwan is going to invite a strong response from the rest of the like-minded countries, and they're already practiced and they've got forces here. You might know that there are reciprocal arrangements between many countries to station troops in Japan. That used to be only enjoyed by the United States. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Defense will have a 2+2 in the Philippines. Let me see, that is, that's next week on July 7th and 8th. That's a big deal. This 2+2 is something that's come up pretty recently, of getting the defense minister and the foreign ministers together. They are going to, it is planned to sign reciprocal agreements there too, where Japanese forces can be stationed in the Philippines and Philippine forces can be stationed in Japan. They can be training, they can be trading techniques and armaments and that sort of thing. There's a lot going on in the Philippines. If you're watching it a little bit, the Chinese Marine forces there are manhandling the resupply of an outpost of the Philippines, actually carrying axes. There was no deaths so far, but there has been some injury as a result of that. So it's really hot, and people are trying to keep that on a low level. But there's a lot going on here. This 4-nation advanced jet fighter exercise coming just next week is a pretty big deal. It's unlikely that we will see it. It's not here in Tokyo, in the Kanto, or even in Honshu. It's in Hokkaido and in Kumamoto and Okinawa. But it is a pretty big deal and a sign of things to come. As you have been following the yen, it tumbled precipitously over the week. It fell to, I think it closed out at 161.5 or 6 on Friday. And now we are back to where Japan was when they first invested the 9.8 trillion yen to prop up the yen. So it bought them some time. It bought them maybe 5 weeks, but we are now back to where they started. And I think the United States and Janet Yellen are saying, we told you, don't do it like that way. If you're going to do it, then you need to do it in an organized fashion with the rest of everybody else, participating or telling you how to do it. And the Japanese just couldn't stand it. So they're stuck now. They could intervene once again with a tremendous amount of money to prop it up. But I think the, history tells us it's like eating Chinese food. You're still going to be hungry. It's still going to bounce back. And there are some people saying that the yen is just going to float and find its own level. It could go to 170 in very quick order. And I'm thinking that that's what's going to happen. I don't think there's going to be a very strong intervention at this point in time. Also, there's a new foreign exchange chief that was named. This is typically the time when the finance ministry, the Bank of Japan, switches out or changes, rotates their senior executives and also the middle level managers as well. And this was the time when they switched out their foreign exchange chief. The foreign exchange chief who was responsible for the $9.8 trillion infusion is moving on. He's being replaced by 59-year-old Atsushi Mimura, and he will be taking office just as soon as there's the G20 later this month in Rio de Janeiro. So changing people sometimes has impact on changing policy. It's a little bit too early to say, but Japan and the yen and the foreign currency is in tremendous flux right now, and it impacts a lot of things. It impacts the cost of food, it impacts the cost of imported goods, which Japan is reliant upon. So you can expect a little bit more volatility going forward. And we're entering into the summer months where the air conditioning costs are going to soar. The Japanese government has said they're going to continue the subsidy from August into August and September. It was supposed to be cut off. So Japanese consumers will get a little bit of a boost, not a whole lot, but a little bit of a boost in their electricity costs in these very hot months. The new notes we've talked about before, the Ichimaen Satsu, the Jumaen Satsu, the Gosen Satsu, and the Sen Satsu, these denominations for Japanese currency, 10,000 yen, 1,000 yen, and the 5,000 yen note will undergo change, and they'll be released. Tomorrow's the first day of July. It'll be released on Wednesday. So you'll see these new bills coming out. They have a new person on each of the faces that represent different parts of the Japanese economy and Japanese pride and history. So it's something to look forward to. The election posters have reached a lot of, or have received a lot of attention and generated controversy because of the practice of the NHK against, let's fight against the NHK party. The actual name of the party is the NHK Kara Kokumi o Mamoru Kai. So let's protect the people from against the NHK. They have, of the 48 slots, and there are 56 candidates, as you probably know, there are 56 candidates for governor. The election boards that are spread all over town, 14,000 of them, only have places for 48 slots. So through a lottery, they picked the other 8 people to staple their posters on the board to just kind of flap around. But you might have noticed that not all of the slots have been filled, and the reason for that is because your political supporters, each individual candidate is supposed to put their own posters up. The government pays for the poster and they pay for the billboards, but they don't put the posters up for people. So Tachibana has taken his posters. He's got 26 candidates that are running for his party. Not 26 are going to win, of course, but he's gotten 26 candidates, and then he's taken some of those slots and sold them to supporters to generate revenue. It's not against the law, but it is somewhat shocking when you go by and you see this great number of the same faces, or maybe different faces that look a little bit apolitical or unpolitical. It's causing a little bit of controversy. The Internal Affairs Minister has said it needs to be changed. It probably won't be changed for this election season. But the Tokyo police have also been called in about defilation of some of the faces, and also for the abuse of the election control law. And so there has been a bit of a tapping down of this exuberance that is really causing a lot of controversy. It's almost the secondary news as big as Renho and Koike when they speak and get their supporters riled up with on the campaign vehicles with all the microphones. So this is a big deal in this election cycle. I don't think you'll see it in the next one, but it is something of great curiosity, not just to us who live here in Japan, but also to international observers too. You might remember in the election of Tokyo 15, there was a candidate who was very exuberant, sitting on top of telephone boxes and chasing his competitors' trucks and shouting at them while they were trying to make speeches. So it's a funny time in Japanese politics, and this is an election time. So a lot can happen during these periods of time. Maya, I'm going to wrap it up pretty soon. I know we've got lots of questions. I sense people want to talk about the debate on Thursday, on what was it, Friday morning?
Friday morning in Japan.
Friday morning,
Yes.
and the potential implications there. But I don't want to get too deep into it at this point in time. Let's just wait for the Q&A. Thank you very much, Maya, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Timothy. And before we go into the questions and answers, I want to say thank you to our other sponsor, that is Houze Inc. And it is presented by Hana Urushizawa Howell. So, Hana, thank you very much indeed for agreeing to be our sponsor, for coming up and being here every morning on Wednesday and Sunday. So, and Houze Inc. Probably you already know that, but just to say it once again, Houze Inc. Offers once again bilingual services in home design, renovation, also renovation of homes and commercial properties. So if you're interested in also in doing any of these, contact Hana Urushizawa Howell on LinkedIn, or reach out to them later by using the contact details which are shared on YouTube and LinkedIn as well. So thank you, Timothy, for this, and we can dive into the questions and answers from now. So the very first one, the very first question is not so closely related to politics. It comes from Cam in Clubhouse, and it is about travel and tourism in Japan. So I'll read it out to you. Cam writes, I recently traveled to Shimoda and Nagano and was surprised at the lack of visible foreign tourists, especially given the record surge of tourism this year in Japan. Considering Japan's focus on promoting rural tourism, are there any existing or potential incentives to increase tourism from Japan to these rural areas? This is the first question.
Okay, Maya, since this is your area of responsibility, I'll give you the first bite at that.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I have to say that this has been a topic and also a topic of consideration for at least 6 years now in Japan. It started even before the pandemic hit, and there was a lot of talk about over tourism back then. Basically, I don't like the term over tourism, because to me it is not a problem of over tourism, it is a problem of lack of management of tourist flows, because this lack of management basically has caused tourists to concentrate in certain areas, very limited number of areas. And Japan is very vast, in terms of resources, tourist resources, Japan has a lot to offer, just the tourist flows haven't been managed well. And the tourism agency and the Japan National Tourism Organization, they have been working on this. We don't know how deep that work has gotten, but the problem there is that basically it doesn't depend only on the central agencies and the central authorities. It also depends on the local authorities, and the local communities, whether they want to welcome travel and tourists from overseas or not. And let's face the facts, some local communities are really very, very willing to do that, and others are not. So there is a dynamic there, and it is complex. It's not so easy, to basically for the central authorities to just suddenly start promoting the rural areas. There are many, many things that needs to be considered. And as you know, in Japan, every decision takes at least three times longer than it does in other countries. So yes, there are certain, things that are going on. We haven't seen the results yet, but I'm sure that there is a lot that is being done at the moment, so that Japan can move into that direction. Sorry, Timothy, it got kind of
No,
long.
no, that's okay. I'm going back to Shimoda though. I'm surprised that you weren't. It's more of a rural area, but Shimoda is a real magnet for the people who live in Japan because it's got the great beaches and good places to eat and spend the night and bring the kids and stuff like that. I think for the foreigners, they want to see more of the cultural stuff, not so much about Shimoda. But Shimoda is a great place, and I'm glad you finally got there. I can't wait to hear the stories about your travel, Cam. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I'll continue with the next question from Cam, which is about the elections and the election boards there in Tokyo. We already know that there are 14,000 of them here in, the 23 wards of the capital. Okay, Timothy, here we go. Do the election boards require candidates to be real humans, given that one of the candidates running is called AI and has the face of a robot?
Yeah, I think what we've learned in this election cycle is that it doesn't necessarily need to. You can use the election board for your own purposes, even selling it to somebody who wants to use it to publicize themselves. And probably most people are not that involved in it, but I'm watching it on TV and NHK and the 5.5 minutes that they give to these candidates, and some of this stuff is just zany. It's just screwball crazy. But it's not because they want to become a governor. It's because they're trying to use this as a leverage to get more and more publicity. Um, I think probably that's going to continue because it seems to me, to be I think paying the 3 million yen to enter into the race doesn't mean that you have the intention to run as a serious race for governor, but I think it's more a free speech uh, situation that the Japanese metropolitan or the Tokyo metropolitan government will evaluate. So I think uh, it it is likely to continue, but not to the degree that it is now. But you'll still have zany people wearing makeup and having funny hair and just doing zany things just to attract eyeballs and to um, uh, have people know that they're selling a certain product or they're famous for a certain book or that sort of thing. But I think realistically, it is a popularity contest. Uh, this is a tremendous amount. They've never had this many candidates for governor in the past. But only one person will become governor, and the real contenders are maybe 3 or 4 or 5. It's a popularity contest among above and beyond anything else. And I think in that, the current governor has the leg up on repeating her tenure as governor.
Right. Okay. Thank you for the answer. And also, Timothy, we talked about this a little bit earlier this week. But sometimes, of course, some of the poster boards, the slots there are still empty. They haven't been filled up. And also, while we were talking about the number of candidates, I remember I asked you, so do you think that, having so many candidates will diminish the chances of one of the favorites, like Miss Koike or Renho-san to win? So is that going to take away of the votes they
Sure.
might otherwise accumulate?
Sure, it does. And the race here is if you pay the entry fee and you receive 10% of the vote, the entry fee is returned to you because you are a serious candidate. If you're just abusing the system, then it costs you 3 million yen. So there are some people who will get 10 or 12 or 15%. And you know that it's not enough to win the election, but it is enough for you to maybe benefit somehow by cozying up to one of the contenders. So, like they say, politics makes strange bedfellows. So that means that even though your political leanings might be one way or the other, and let's face it, in Tokyo politics, the spectrum is not that broad. I mean, what they're going to be arguing about is mostly child care, elderly care. What are we going to do with Gaien Mai and cut down the trees, and some of the policies that have been promoted by Tomin First and by the current governor? The people who are unaffected or disaffected by some of those policies will be coming up, but it's not a huge fight over, communism versus democracy. It's not like that at all. So I think people could generate, a good backing, and then parlay that to one of the candidates, and a candidate who could be in a position to, I just need 10 more, 10,000 more votes, and then I'm a real contender. So that could happen, and if that happens, that'll be happening this week, and I expect it's going to be.
All right, so thank you for that. Also, we have help from Hiroko-san about the ospreys, if you don't
Yes.
mind me reading that. So she wrote that 3 ospreys crashed off a Japanese southern coast, and it was near Yakushima in November last year.
Yakushima, that's right.
Yes, Hiroko-san, thank you for helping us with the details. Also, she wrote that she just came back from a business trip to the United States, and the exchange rate there was 167 yen per dollar, which is, yes, amazing. I mean, and of course, Rumiko there, she also explained why that is, the rate there was different from the one we we have in Japan as well. So, Rumiko, thank you for doing that as well. And, also, on YouTube, Hiroaki is with us there. And then Hiroaki wrote, lively LDP Counselor Election Debate would be good, but the results will remain unchanged here in Japan. So I imagine that, Hiroaki, you're talking about the possibility of having a debate in Japan. And yes, so I don't know. Timothy, do you think that it's going?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Japanese absolutely love this, and it gives the candidates an opportunity to be on NHK or on any of the television stations. They invited them to come on and speak in the context of their political views or what they're going to do with their opponents sitting there. So it goes on quite a bit. It's a different kind of debate. It's not like what we saw with CNN or what we typically see in U.S. presidential debates, but it is a lively opportunity. And of course, the politicians jump at that opportunity to be on TV. Somebody else is paying for it. It's publicity. It's free publicity for you.
Well, I don't recall to have seen any debates of that kind in Japan, though. I mean, like,
I think the reason why you didn't see it is because it happens so often that it's not portrayed as it's going to be a debate, with the flags flying, and it's just not like that. It's a different kind of mix, but it does happen on Japanese television stations all the time.
right. Okay. Well, thank you for that, because obviously I don't watch Japanese TV often enough, so apologies for that. And then, okay, so my next question to you, Timothy, is once again about, let's say, the impact of this debate and the candidates. I'm talking about the debate between President Joe Biden and the former President Donald Trump on Japanese politics. So the question is, do you think, we know that basically they still have time, the two parties in the US, they still have time to change the candidates, right? Because, one of them, I think that the Republican Party is going to announce the official candidate in the middle of June, and then the Democrats are going to announce their candidate later in August.
That's right.
They still have time to change the official candidatures of the running the people running for presidency. But at this point of time, do you think that these two candidates, if they continue running, so they will have any impact on the Japanese politics, and how?
No, absolutely. It's if President Trump becomes president, or if Biden remains president, it's going to have a huge impact, not just on the economy here and what's going on with the exchange rate, but also this military dialogue that continues. President Biden has successfully pushed Japan to cross this bridge and to extend the friendship to the South Koreans. They've done a tremendous amount of work there and made great effort to bridge that tremendous gap between the two countries. There might be a little bit of a fallback now that is unrelated to Biden or to Trump. It's more related to the fact that President Yoon has lost the majority in his Congress, and he's somewhat of a lame duck. And the distance between the party in power and the party out of power is so huge. The party out of power is, you know, yeah, it's very difficult. They're not in line with the United States and Japan cozying up to South Korea. They want to do it a little bit differently, and they think the policies being pursued by President Yoon are all wrong. So it's quite a bit different. You don't have that dissension so much here in Japan on policy issues, but in the United States you certainly do. And so the Biden administration now is trying very hard to cement the relations and the agreements that they're establishing now between their trading partners and the military alliances, so that it's kind of Trump-proof, so that even though Mr. Trump comes in, he's not really able to implement much change on that. And maybe that's a good thing, I don't know. But when you get into that kind of a negotiation, you're trading a little bit more than you perhaps want to, because you're just trying to close that deal and you're trying to protect your interests as long as possible, even if you fall out of office. But clearly, the second Trump administration is going to be far more aggressive. I think it's going to be far more successful in a lot of different areas. The whole thing about President Trump is make America great again, so that you'll probably see a retrenchment back into the United States and a focus on, Americans, American cities, American citizens, the veterans and that sort of thing, closing the border more tightly. Yes, there will be a vast change with President Trump at the helm. And I think, if you've listened to President Barack Obama, former President Barack Obama, and some of the advisors, President Biden is in this race. He's not going to resign. They're not going to encourage him to resign. That's the word that I heard just this last week on Friday. President Biden is that kind of a person. He's stubborn. He's determined, and probably he just chalks it up to a glitch in the system. He had a bad day, but he's going to really kick ass the next time that he has to debate Donald Trump. And I think he intends to stay. At least that's the status right now. And I think he should stay. That's what the Democratic Party voted on. That's who they elected. The Biden-Harris poll, or the Biden-Harris ticket, was what they wanted. And so maybe they should stick with it and see how the cards fall. But there's a lot left. Like you said, there's a lot of time between now and then. I'm really curious about the vice presidential pick for Donald Trump. I think that will be an electrifying moment.
All right. Okay. Thank you for those thoughts, sharing them with us. And if you allow me to go back once again to the beginning of this briefing, you mentioned that Mr. Suga has implied strongly that Kishida-san should give way to other candidates, if we can say so. But do you think that this will really have any impact on Mr. Suga? Yes.
So the progeny of Mr. Suga saying that, and this was, I think, Sunday, he made this comment, and the progeny of that was that in the local LDP regions in Hokkaido, in Aomori, in some of the outside regions, not from people who are members of the upper house or the lower house. These are people who are LDP members that are in the city government or in the city houses, the administrate, like the Tokyo Metropolitan Government House of Representatives. it's those people who were beginning to say, this prime minister doesn't do us any good. I'm going to go up for election, and since I'm in the LDP, I'm going to be painted with that. And look what's happened to the last 6 elections, and the LDP lost, or they were too afraid to put up a candidate. This is my district, and if we continue with this guy, I'm going to lose. So do something about it. So that was building and building for a couple of weeks as we closed up the diet. Then we closed the diet, and that's when Mr. Suga said, I'm getting a lot of this from the regions, and I think it's probably about time for this prime minister to consider stepping down and opening the way for new ideas and new fresh thoughts on how to run the country. It's not that Mr. Suga is throwing his hat into the ring. I don't think that that's in the cards. He would not, I don't think, put himself up as a candidate. But making a comment like that kind of opens the door, and other people can say it too. So as a consequence of that, I believe as a consequence of that, then Kono Taro thought, I need to throw my hat into the ring. I need to be a first mover here. I can get a lot of attention and generate some, well-needed appreciation for what I want to do for the country. If I announce first, if I announce when everybody else is announcing, I'm just lost in the crowd. But we expect him to formally announce, but not until maybe August.
You're talking about Mr. Kono Taro,
That's
yes?
right.
Yeah, I'm asking you because just the other day I had a conversation with somebody who is in one of, basically in the national media here in Japan. And that person mentioned that Kono Taro does have a lot of popularity. He's popular among the general public, but because of some, of the glitches there were in the My Number cards and so on and so on, that popularity has decreased significantly during the past 1 year. And also, that person mentioned that the polls, they have watched, they have seen so far, also show that he is not very popular within the LDP either. So I wonder how that is going to play out, because I think that there was a moment when his popularity was really high, and a lot of people were hoping that he would, be a candidate and he would win and he would be eventually not the PM of Japan and so on. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think this is kind of like Koike and the Cairo University thing. You hear the same thing over and over again. It's not a very sophisticated analysis. Kono Taro has heard these things too, and over the last 3 years, he's been in a position to do something about it, to improve his standing among the local LDP members and also at the national level, to mend his ties with Mr. Aso. I'm not aware of what he's done or how he's devoted his time, but he wants to become prime minister, so that he's heard these stories too. It's like with Governor Koike. I'm sure she has shored up this criticism about Cairo University, and in fact, you don't hear much of it anymore. It's not really much of a valid criticism. So it's the other thing too is that you don't have to be number one to win. There could be a race off, and then the first 2 top contenders, they rob so much of the votes from everybody else that the third contender actually rises up, and it tends to knock out the number 2 contender, and the number 3 rises up to number 2. It's very complicated how the voting sways back and forth. But I have a lot of confidence in Kono Taro. I think if he doesn't make it this time, eventually he will be. He's still young, and he's got a great pedigree. They do have some concerns about his political stance on China and on LGBT and on some of these social issues that do cause some people to consider him as a prime minister. But I think it all washes out in the end, and I think when you go into a campaign, it really finalizes and refines your position on a lot of different issues. So he's not over, and I don't think he's somebody that should be discounted as a potential prime minister.
Right. And then along these lines, then there is always, a question about women in politics. And do you expect any, candidates to come from, the other gender? Is it the right term
How,
actually? Any women?
which gender are you talking? How many genders? Which gender are you talking about?
I mean, like, okay, any female candidates to run for this presidential election of the LDP and eventually for prime minister?
Okay, probably Sanae Takaichi.
Hmm.
Takaichi will be a candidate. She hasn't announced. She's very popular. She's she's kept a low profile, but she's done such a tremendous job. And on the stump, she is really good. She's a very polished orator, and she's very highly thought of. She was a contender the last two times, and I think she will be a contender this time. I think she'll be a contender until either she retires from politics or becomes prime minister. So she's not going away. There are also some other contenders that we haven't talked too much about. The current foreign minister is a hot topic. She belongs to the Aso faction. The Aso faction is still in existence, you'll remember. And also, Mr. Hayashi, who is the chief cabinet secretary, gosh, he's superlative. He far outshines the current foreign minister. He was foreign minister, as you know, and I think he really hasn't put his best foot forward yet. But I think he would be a real challenge for even Kono Taro, who has run twice. When Mr. Hayashi decides that he wants to run, and he wouldn't do it, I don't think this time. He's in the cabinet. He's best friends with the prime minister. He's probably his number two in the faction. I'm sorry, maybe I misspoke. I apologize. He's in the Kishida faction, not the Aso faction.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that, Yuka. Yes.
Thank you. No, I have a question on Miss Takaichi because I've heard some talking heads this week to prepare for this briefing, Timothy, so that I
Okay.
can ask interesting questions. So I did my homework. No, it's actually I did better. But anyway, so Miss Takaichi, somebody was saying she is just too conservative.
Yeah.
She just too LDP. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I agree. But that's not a bad row to hoe. Sticking with the conservative wing, and it really depends on what else is going on, what political winds are going on, what's going on geopolitically, how the Bank of Japan and the foreign ministry feels like they're being manhandled by G20 or by the finance ministers or by Janet Yellen. It at some point in time, the Japanese are going to say, we really need to take charge. We need to be able to defend ourselves and to be able to project our power and our wealth. We need to get back on track. And the reason why we haven't is because of these policies that failed, and we need to go back to our basics. And that could happen in a very short period of time. So it all depends.
Okay, cool.
But she's solid. She's
She's so
solid. She's not she doesn't waver. She doesn't whiffle waff. She's a standard bearer.
great. Actually, this question was I just threw that in, but I really wanted to ask you this question, which is on election posters.
Yeah.
Again, this wasn't coming from me. I just heard on some talking heads. They said Japan should abolish those election posters entirely. Instead, just mail those, like a ballot, and then with the description of each candidate and what they stand for.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a great idea. I mean,
No,
what is this?
No, it is a good idea. And Tachibana, the candidate for the NHK, let's beat up NHK, I think he's pointing that out. These election poster boards, they don't do anything. They actually skew just because somebody looks a certain way or because they're female and they're in vogue now or their hair is different or something like that. So let's abuse the hell out of it because it's a bastardization of what democracy should be like. Democracy should be more like and whatever his platform is. But it's kind of like he's against the status quo. He's against NHK. He's against the LDP. He wants things to be a little bit different, and he wants the election process to be more of like what you said. Give people a choice, give them a real choice, not this kind of recipe that's been practiced for the last 25, 30 years, and then people game that system. That's what's going on right now. They're gaming the boards and getting their pictures out there. So he's kind of tweaking their nose and doing it a different way. I don't think it's such a bad thing.
But what preventing that from happening? Just because of the policies? It's been written like yes, we have to have election boards. Is that the law?
Yeah. Okay, so the reason for the election boards, there are limited areas that you can promote yourself if you are a candidate. NHK gives you 5.5 minutes twice during the campaign to talk about what your policies are and what you're going to do as governor, right? They give that to you twice. You also have radio time, but when you go into the ballot box, you're supposed to write the person's name. That's how you vote. Ooh, this wind. You have to write their name. So that's why on the sound trucks, you see the name is the most dominant kanji character on the truck. It's not vote for me, it's my name. It's the 4 characters or 5 characters that make up my name. And the reason is because you have to write that name, and if you're 1 stroke off, it's counted as a misspelling, or it's counted as a invalid vote. So you have to imprint on people's minds what your name is and how it's written. And there are 2 really good ways to do that. One is you have a truck that blares out your name. Hi, my name is Tim Langley. Tim Langley. Tim Langley. Hi, Tim Langley. Right? You just repeat that over and over again. Hopefully, when you go into the ballot box, you remember that name of all the names that are in front of you. They're going to have 56 names this time. You remember that one for some reason, because you wore makeup, or you had a funny hat on, or because you said something that was really struck a chord in your heart, and then you write their name down. But it has to be on the kanji character, and having the name and the face is, having that relationship is pretty important too. So the sound truck, the poster board, and also NHK. But I think most people are not going to watch NHK. 56 people, 5.5 minutes, twice during the election campaign. That's a lot. And who's going to wake up or stay awake to watch your candidate, or watch 4 candidates or 20 candidates? I think it's a little bit, like Tachibana said, it's just a bastardization of the process.
Okay, thank you. I never voted in Japan, like, what kind of Japanese am I? But anyway, in the US, you have to, darken the bubbles next to the name. Isn't it easier? I mean, so you don't have to, like, okay, anyway, okay, enough for the election. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, you could do it that way, but the tradition and the culture here dictates that you write it, you use the Japanese character. That's part of the system here. So if you wanted to do it differently, vastly differently, as you were first proposing, or as Tachibana is kind of suggesting that this pattern doesn't work, you have to change a lot of different layers in order to get to that point. So it's crushing a lot of technical and cultural ways of doing things. And like Maya was saying, it takes 3 times longer to get anything done here. But that's why, because it's so layered. Everything depends on something else. And when you change something, somebody whose family has been for 3 generations making money off of whatever it is, making posters or being a carpenter for the poster boards, they lose out on that. So you have that contingency of people who are disenfranchised. So it's very complicated.
Okay, got it. Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay, now I'm kind of getting to know the system. But can I change the subject? And just quickly, I want to promote your midweek podcast. Can I do that?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so I know you guys didn't, you're not, I'm not your sponsor, but anyway, I'm going to do it anyway. So those are the great, your midweek, like 15, 20 minutes, you just give us the bullet points. But my question actually is, why are you focusing on so much on the energy policy? Is that energy, the future of energy policy is really that, so you believe that's really important to Japan, right? Japanese future.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we all know that Japan is a small country. It has few resources. It's got a lot of people. It's got mountains that occupy 90% of the topography. So people actually only live on 10% or 7% of the arable land. The rest of it is for farming and that sort of thing. So even though they say that Japan is the size of California, actually the space that people can live on is very, very restricted. So the reason why the yen is at the level that it is, and the reason why the Japanese economy is in the situation that it is because it imports almost all of its energy resources. It does generate some. It has nuclear energy that it's been trying really hard to capitalize on. But even in the heyday before the 3/11 disaster, triple disaster, it was only producing about 18%, and it needs to be a much higher figure. They are bringing in wind generation to supplement that, but when it comes to oil and petroleum products, Japan is at the whim of the Middle East, of the United States, of geopolitical situations, and they have to ship it in. So they're completely vulnerable. So they have to figure out how we can have a homegrown energy source that isn't reliant on, number one, foreigners to produce that and ship that to us, and number two, to be in the crosshairs of anything geopolitically that happens that stops us from getting our supply, which can happen very easily. Japan is in a very vulnerable position. So if they can fix that somehow, I know the Prime Minister and the entire administration is working on that, reducing waste, reducing consumption, enhancing the amount of energy per input for coal or petroleum or gas, liquid gas, that sort of thing. So yeah, we spend a lot of time talking about that because that's really kind of the sorcerer's key. If Japan could fix the energy, it would be on a rocket because of the rest of the economy. But yeah, that's
Why we are not revisiting the nuclear reactors? Is that too sensitive or just too political?
it's still too sensitive. Kono Taro is not a proponent of nuclear energy, so there are some people that say, he's not the greatest candidate for us, and there are other proponents who say we need to go full bore on nuclear. Nuclear is the cleanest, and you could possibly say the safest, but then you had 3/11. So if there is any disaster, if there is any mistake or miscalculation, the repercussions of that are just tremendous. And Japan is suffering from that now. I mean, even the Chinese won't eat anything that's being produced in Japan, foodstuffs or fruits and vegetables. So you can't really say that it's safe. They don't have a good solution for storing the waste product from nuclear energy. They need to come up with smaller and more versatile nuclear generators. I think they're well on the way to that, but I think Japan also has this allergy towards nuclear for a lot of different reasons, and it's complicated.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, thank you. So I look forward to your next midweek podcast. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. So the last midweek podcast, it's actually bi-monthly. The last one was on export control policy, which is undergoing a really significant change. And I think the briefing I'm going to give in 2 weeks' time is about battery capacity and how you can use green energy, windmills, wave technology, and that sort of thing to store energy so that you can use it in times when it's not being produced. So that technology is moving forward. It's a very important issue. But yes, energy, as you rightly point out, it's a critical issue for Japan.
Yeah, it's part of its economic security, and it's really something that the government has been working on for quite a while, creating policies and so on. Well, Yuka, thank you for the questions. And now I'm going to LinkedIn again, and there we have Rumiko's questions about the 9 seats in the lower house you mentioned. When is that election going to be?
That's
First.
on the same day as the governor's election. So
Mm-hmm.
when you go into the ballot booth, there's a list for governor, and then there's a list if you're in one of these election districts. So it's not all 23 wards. Only the people that are in the five Tokyo wards, they'll have 2 ballots. Who do you want to vote for governor, and who do you want to vote for the House of Representatives member in your district? That seat became open. It is now a time for a by-election. There are 3 other seats. One is in Tama, one is in Inagi, and the other one is in where is it? Fuchu.
Okay, yes, thank you for the answer, Rumiko. I hope this is good for you. And then the other one, how do you think this election for the 9 seats in the lower house will affect the coming election in September?
Great question. Who's that from?
Rumiko.
That's a great question. So the LDP is not running head to head against the Constitutional Democratic Party in any of these seats. They're not running in all 9 seats. The LDP is not running in all 9. I think they're running in 6 of them. They already have 5 of those seats. Those seats have become vacant, and so they're trying to come in and replace another LDP member with the LDP member who left. So they could have left for any number of reasons, death or just a resignation or because of some sort of scandal. So the LDP wants to at least maintain parity. They want actually 6. They've got 5. They would like to increase it to 6. If they get less than 3, I think people will say, the LDP, it's just a party of the past. It can't even get its act together. It can't elect people in the districts that it was dominant in for the last 2 election cycles. And they lost to whoever they lost to. Mostly they're independents, or they couch themselves as independents. And then once they win their seat and they show their true colors and they say, by the way, I received a lot of funding from the Constitutional Democratic Party or from Ishin, that sort of thing. So as I said in Tokyo politics, it's the LDP that's on top, then it's Tomin first, and then it's Komeito. So they dominate that, and that means that they're in a position to generate more good feelings and goodwill from the voters to replace themselves. They have a better election campaign machine, presumably, as a consequence of that. So if you're Ishin or the Constitutional Democratic Party, it's an uphill battle. So yes, it could dictate what other people feel about the LDP if the LDP comes in short. And it also could really boost the sales of the Constitutional Democratic Party by coming in and taking all of the seats that they're running in. They're not running in all 9 of them, but they are running in, I think, 4.
Right. So there is a gradual change of balance in the lower house. Probably will, yeah, it will affect definitely the
Well,
policy making.
the great thing about this briefing that we have every week, Maya, is that people who tune in, and I really gratefully appreciate everybody tuning in. We try and keep it tight and short so that you can get on with the rest of your life. But you see the march of how things happen, how policy is changed, and how the dynamics of who's on top and who's on the bottom, who's fighting and clawing to get back in is there. But it really takes a little bit of dedication to following what the pattern is and who's involved in that sort of thing. So I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, me too. So thank you for saying that to everybody who is listening to us now. Rumiko, there is another question on LinkedIn from you, and I just cannot. I'm not
Understand
sure. No, I'm not sure that I can understand. What the question is. So because it looks like there are 2 questions in one, and I'll probably do only the first part of it at the moment. So Timothy, there was a trilateral meeting earlier this year between China, South Korea, and Japan.
That's right.
So, what do you think? do you think that it will actually help mending, the
Yeah.
relations between the West and the East? Because we know that there is a lot of rhetoric about what China is doing and how China is not doing that well, and it is stepping in other countries' territories. So, do you think that there will be any positive outcomes, in or let's say long-term outcomes from this trilateral meeting?
Okay, so you asked, is it going to have any beneficial impact on between the West and the East? And
Yes.
the purpose of that meeting was to exclude the West. We don't want you guys involved. It's just us guys. It's just us Asians. It's China, Korea, and Japan. Let's get together. The Americans, they're so bullying. They're so dominant. We could have a beautiful world if the three of us got together. We would have the most marvelous economy. We wouldn't have these trade wars. We wouldn't have this military confrontation. Let's get our act together. But that's a little bit maybe too expansive. But the fact is that just having a meeting is success in itself. It's been 5 years or 4 years since they had that trilateral meeting. Getting them together is a good thing. And I think that was the intention of the people who put it together. So the fact that the Japanese, the South Koreans, and the Chinese did get together and they talked about 20, I think maybe 19 or 20 items. Not everything was there. Military was not there. Just how can we cooperate with each other on AI, on disaster mitigation? How can we do trade flows a little bit more conveniently to us all? How can we help our citizens by collaborating a little bit better? That was the purpose there, and I think they succeeded in that.
All right. Okay, thank you for that. So, and then, Rumiko, if you have other questions, and everybody who is watching and listening, let us know on LinkedIn, YouTube, Clubhouse, probably on Facebook as well. We're on Facebook there. So, but at the moment, yes, if you have any questions from now on, share them with us and we'll address them. We answer them next Sunday morning. For the moment, we have gone through all the questions and comments we have, and Timothy is rejoicing that he will be let off the hook and he can go and sail. So, Timothy, I can see why you are so happy. Well, you're in a beautiful setting once again. Gabor commented on your setting this morning that it's, it looks very nice.
It's
And
very nice.
yes, lucky you. That's it for the moment. Before we close up, though, I would like to say once again thank you to our sponsors. They are Kanacho.com and also Houze Inc. If you need bilingual services in selling and buying homes or home design and renovation of private and commercial properties, contact James or Hannah and talk with them. I'm sure that you receive customized services from them because, we have worked with them, we know them well, and that's what I can say. In the meantime, also please be with us this Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock and also next Sunday, yes, 8:20 when Timothy will be reporting once again from we don't know where yet, but somewhere around the Tokyo Bay. Okay, that's all. Thanks a lot, Timothy.
Thank you, Maya. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Woohoo!
Yay.